I know people will hate me for that, but it at least gives us some intrigue because I think someone should have died at the end of this. Like, what? No. Hi there, welcome back to another video. My name is Gabrielle, and today I'm really excited to talk about all of my ideas and share some ideas that I found all about alternative endings to A Court of Wings and Ruin. If you're not too familiar, this is about the series A Court of Thorns and Roses, commonly referred to as ACOTAR, written by best-selling author Sarah J Maas. I'm not planning to dive much into the series itself. This is really focusing on the ending of the third book in the trilogy of Court of Wings and Ruin, or ACOWAR, and all the fun ideas. I recently read the book, and immediately upon finishing, I had already thought of 3 different options of how I thought it should have ended instead. And then I was curious to read what other people's thoughts are, so I have some ideas that I found online. This book was actually my favorite within the series, which I find is an uncommon opinion. I find people love the second book in the trilogy the most. But just to share a little bit, so the ACOTAR series was originally set to be a 3-book series, or a trilogy, but since then it's actually expanded. So there are now scheduled to be 6 books total, with the 3 books after the original trilogy being a spin-off. Excuse my little yawning. With the 3 additional books after the trilogy set to be spin-offs of other characters. The first 3 books follow protagonist Feyre, with the 4th book that is already published following her oldest sister Nesta. I believe one of the additional books will be a novella, and it's rumored that the other book within the total 6 will be following Elaine Archeron, who is the middle sister of the 3 Archeron sisters, with Nesta, Elaine, and Feyre in that order. This is an obvious spoiler warning for ACOWAR, but of course for the whole ACOTAR series, including A Court of Silver Flames. All right, well, I'm just gonna jump right in and discuss the 3 ideas that I had for alternative endings, and then once I share those, I'll go through and share some ideas of what I found other people online have shared. As we know, ACOWAR ends with the giant battle against Hybern, but more specifically, I'm referring to the final scenes, such as the one where Nesta calls out to save Cassian, and more importantly, the scene where Rhys gives Feyre all of his power to put the cauldron together, and he dies. And then all the High Lords come together to once again give their essence to bring him back to life, just like they did for Feyre. Now, the first idea that I'm gonna give, I think will probably be most controversial, if not all of them will be controversial, but immediately once I got to the part where Feyre realizes the only High Lord who's not there at the moment to give Rhys their power is Tamlin, I immediately was thinking and hoping that Sarah J Maas would make Tamlin go full villain mode. The Tamlin that we got in ACOWAR, who was like making terrible and rude statements to Feyre and Rhys, like, it just makes sense for him to go full villain mode. I know that he saved them when they were retrieving Elaine, and he like helped Feyre and Az escape, but I think that because by the end of ACOWAR, Sarah J Maas already knew that she would have the contracts for the other books, because she even said that she started drafting Silver Flames while she was writing ACOWAR, or at least like jotting down ideas for Nesta's story because she thought there was more. So I'm just thinking, like, why not just extend the series still from Feyre's perspective, because everyone loves Feyre and Rhys, but make Tamlin go full villain mode. So what I think should have happened is he refuses to give his power to Rhys, so Rhys remains dead. And then I think it would have been really interesting for the next book to follow Feyre's journey of like kind of going mad, but there could have been this really cool like journey to the underworld, and that would have given an opportunity for maybe like the 3 sisters, the Archeron sisters, to journey to wherever death is together. or the underworld together to like find him and bring him back. We could have gotten some kind of like Greek mythology ideas in there, but I think that would have been so cool. Like, one, in A Court of Silver Flames, we already hear more about how Tamlin has like kind of gone crazy. He's like neglecting the spring court. He doesn't care about anything or anyone anymore. So I'm like, why not just make him go ham? Like, make him go full villain mode and refuse to help Feyre out. I just think that would have been so much more interesting than him just being like, be happy, Feyre. Like, what? No, I just don't think that's realistic. I don't think Tamlin would do that. I think he is much more offended about how things went down with them, about how she left him, that he wouldn't just like give Rhys back his life. I know he has a history with Rhys where they used to be friends, but like, come on now. I think that there would have been more. The next one I think is a little more common of an idea, less of a controversial thought, but I think that Amren just should have stayed dead. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Amren, and she might be my favorite of all the Inner Circle, including Feyre, actually. I have heard some criticisms of Sarah where people say she's afraid to kill her lead characters, and I kind of see that in this case. I just don't get why Amren needed to be brought back. Like, I understand some fans may have been upset, but I think it was necessary for someone in the Inner Circle to die. Now, of course, like I said, I think it should have been Rhys, because that would have been so much more interesting to more books in the story. But if we can't have one of the main characters dead, at least like make Amren dead. She had already done this huge sacrifice. Like, there was, excuse my little drinking. There was already that fun little twist where Amren kind of lies to Feyre to get her to use the cauldron, and Feyre thinks that Amren's betraying her when really Amren is sacrificing herself. So we have this big moment, and I think there's even a part of the text where Feyre like makes this beautiful statement about Amren like going off. Let me read it. Oh, Amren makes that beautiful line like, tell the High Lord to leave out a cup for me, in reference to like how she drinks blood, and it was just very like sweet. There's this beautiful section of where Amren's making the sacrifice, and it says, she was roaring in victory and rage and pain, and I could have sworn I saw great burning wings, each feather a simmering ember spread wide. Could have sworn a crown of incandescent light floated just above her flaming hair. She paused. The thing that was inside Amren paused, looked at us, at the battlefield, and all our friends, our family still fighting on it, as if to say, I remember you. And then she was gone. That part is just so beautiful. It's like, how could you not just like give Amren that moment? Like, she had this beautiful sacrifice for her family. Like, just let it be that. I get you want them all together, but I just didn't think it was necessary to the story to have her return or to have Rhys like bring her back. Okay, and then the last idea that I had, this was more of an idea I developed after reading A Court of Silver Flames, because I think it would have added more to that story in particular. So I was kind of like, okay, like if Sarah is going to leave, you know, Feyre's perspective behind and just move on to other characters like Nesta, I think what she should have done is kill Cassian. I know people will hate me for that because they love Cassian. I love Azriel more personally, even though we know less about him, I just like him better. It would have been much more interesting to Nesta's development. And it was already set up so that Cassian could have died like pretty easy. It wouldn't have really needed to change much of what Sarah wrote into ACOWAR. There's that moment where there's a bunch of Illyrians that are fighting against Hybern's men, and Nesta has this sense when the cauldron is about to emit its power. So she screams out, Cassian, and he flies over to where she is with the Inner Circle, and right after he does that, the cauldron emits its power, and I'm forgetting the word the book uses, but it like just mists them or like makes all the Illyrians ash like in an instant. So Cassian would have been in there. Now, I think there's multiple aspects that I disagree with, which is why I think Cassian should have died. One of them being, I don't think that he and Nesta should be mates. So I didn't like that in A Court of Silver Flames because, one, it's supposed to be kind of a rare thing. Two, I just don't think it was necessary to the story. And I think it kind of cheapens it, back to the first point, I think it kind of cheapens the fact that they are mates, that like everyone is mates. Plus, like, are you serious? Like, Feyre and Rhys are mates, and like his best friend and her sister are randomly mates as well. And then one of their other close friends of Feyre is mates with her other sister. Like, really, out of all the people in the world, it would have been more interesting if some random guy they didn't know were mates and like Nesta passed him on the street and like had to come to this like realization. Like, but it at least gives us some intrigue because I think someone should have died at the end of this. No, those are my 3 ideas of alternative endings, but I was curious what other ideas are out there. So I wanted to share and read some ideas that I've seen with you from other people online. I will link these down below. There were only a few alternative endings that I found because some of them were just like repeating the same idea in different ways. So I'll start with this one. This username on Tumblr. Hoping this is in reference to Throne of Glass. This one I was really happy to see because, spoiler alert for this idea, they also think that Rhys should have stayed dead. But they actually went a little bit further than I did because in my idea, Rhys is dead. The next book, it's like the Archeron sisters' journey to the underworld to retrieve him. But I did think like eventually they would retrieve him to get the happy ending because I like a happily ever after. But this one, like, he's just dead, so they're a little bit more hardcore than I am. Not reading the whole idea word for word, but I'll summarize it, and again, I'll link it below in case you want to read it. But it is a little bit long, so I'll just read the main points. Mor's on the battlefield. She feels something shift with her magic. She hears Feyre scream, so she winnows over to Feyre and drops at her feet when she sees Rhys dead. Mor is looking to Az for strength, but he's holding bleeding Cassian. The High Lords are dropping their life essence into Rhys, but there's silence because Rhys isn't moving. He is dead. So it's interesting, their idea, even with the High Lord's power, that he stayed dead. I wonder why that would happen. Feyre's laughter breaks the silence and everyone looks at her in confusion. She's whipping her head around, whispering Amren, who in this case I'm assuming is also still dead because Rhys didn't bring her back from the cauldron. So Feyre dives into the cauldron. Desperate to find her friend. The cauldron's empty. Mor is looking at Az for an explanation, but Az is like hurling himself at Helion, trying to demand that he break whatever spell is causing Feyre to laugh and act insane. But Helion's trying to get Feyre to calm down. They're wondering what's happening. Mor is screaming at the High Lords, like, why didn't it work? Az and Cassian are like crying and upset. Then it jumps over back to Valeris. Az, Mor, and Cassian are burying Rhys next to his family. Oh my gosh. While Feyre remains in the city, Nesta is like shouting and yelling at Feyre to see that whatever Feyre is imagining is not real. Feyre is so lost in her own world that it's too much for Nesta. Oh, Elaine tries to take care of Feyre like Feyre did for her when they were younger. Feyre keeps going flying. She's like lost in her own world. Mor has taken up a lot of Rhys's duty and is essentially acting like the High Lady while Feyre is lost to them. Mor is the only one that ever loses patience with Feyre and is always there for her with a sad smile. Oh my goodness, that is so sad. So there's definitely not a happy ending in that idea. I don't think I would have wanted that to happen. This next alternative ending is from we_regretting on Wattpad. And it's alternative ending to ACOWAR. Feyre and Rhys are trying to fix the cauldron. When Rhys dies, the High Lords come and pull a favor on him, they say, basically like giving him their power. But they're saying, we_regretting is saying, but what if the High Lords weren't there? Feyre has part of all 7 High Lords in her, so Feyre would have to pull a favor on Rhys. But to do that, she would have to give up her life to save Rhys's. And they say, and come on, we all know she would do that to save anyone, especially Rhys. Now the reason she would die is because the power of the 7 High Lords is the life force keeping her alive, so she gives it up, then her heart stops beating. Rhys gets to live, but without his High Lady and mate. Afterwards, Rhys would be depressed and would want to die to be with Feyre again, but the inner circle would tell him that Feyre would want him to live on and rule the Night Court for them both. And that's the end. I feel like my ideas are like a little bit less cruel than these two, but I think even that would have been better. Like if Feyre died, how crazy would that be if the main character that started off the series died at the end? Like I don't often read a lot of fantasy romance YA books where the main girl dies. Like that would be crazy, but I think that would have been like much more powerful. I know Sarah would never do that because then the Sarah Maas verse wouldn't be allowed to continue in the same way that she has planned. This next idea, I'm not gonna play it because it's a TikTok, but I'll link it down below. But essentially, the premise kind of expresses a similar idea to what I already shared, so I was very pleased to see that I wasn't alone. But the general premise is that they would keep Amryn dead. They were mentioning how Amryn's presence in the story doesn't really affect the story any differently with her dead or alive in A Court of Silver Flames. They were mentioning how Amryn's death would have built up more resentment for Nesta in Silver Flames, which would have built up to her having to forgive herself and accept Amryn's sacrifice. After the blood rite, their idea was that she would have forgiven Amryn. And there's more details that they outline. This is a TikTok by user Ashby Reads. And again, I'll link down below on the Reddit thread where I saw it. But yeah, I think even that would be better. Like, okay, if you don't want to kill off Rhys and Feyre, I get it. But someone needs to die, and Amryn was dead. Like, she was already dead. So why not just let her stay that way? All right, that is all of the alternative ending ideas I had and that I saw for ACOWAR. If you also had a similar idea after you finished reading it, let me know. I am really interested in talking about this now that I finished it and surprisingly really loved it. Thanks for tuning in to today's video and for listening to me rant for a while. I will see you in another video very soon.